Hi folks, today is Friday, September 10th. Beautiful morning, and it's actually the anniversary of my priesthood ordination. 38 years. Wow. So that's good. What else is going on? Yesterday was the feast of St. Peter Claver, patron of one of our academy schools, and of course, for all of us moved in our Christian lives to be attentive to the work of undoing racism, a saint to look to. So busy days as our academy schools are back on campus this week, like so many students. So in any case, this week, it's 24th Sunday in Ordinary Time. No particular feast. The Feast of the Triumph of the Cross is coming next week, but this weekend's readings again are rich. St. James talks about faith without works is dead. Really classic text, and a troublesome text in Catholic Lutheran relationships going back a few centuries. But the gospel is a familiar one to all of you, from the Gospel of St. Mark's, Gospel of St. Mark. So why don't we just listen to it? There's very rich, and there's a lot to reflect on. This is from the 8th chapter, right in the middle, smack in the middle of St. Mark's Gospel, and really a kind of pivotal turning point right in the middle as well. Jesus and his disciples set out for the villages of Caesarea Philippi. Along the way, he asked his disciples, "Who do people say that I am?" They said in reply, "John the Baptist, others Elijah, still others one of the prophets." And he asked them, "But who do you say that I am?" Peter said to him in reply, "You are the Christ." Then he warned them not to tell anyone about him. He began to teach them that the Son of Man must suffer greatly and be rejected by the elders, the chief priests, and the scribes, and be killed and rise after 3 days. He spoke this openly. Then Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him. At this he turned around and said, looking at his disciples, rebuked Peter and said, "Get behind me, Satan. You are thinking not as God does, but as human beings do." He summoned the crowd with his disciples and said to them, "Whoever wishes to come after me must deny himself, take up their cross and follow me. For whoever wishes to save their life will lose it. But whoever loses their life for my sake and that of the gospel will save it." Jesus as sufferer. This so-called prediction of the passion and Peter's resistance to it. I was reading a commentary on this gospel in the newsletter of Dignity, the gay and lesbian, transgender, bisexual association, if you will, for Catholics. And It was very well done. It was written by a man by the name of Jeb Vomund, who's at George Mason University. In any case, I liked it a lot because, he talked about first about, like a gay person coming out and the act of courage that is. Something as pedestrian, for example, is what are you doing this weekend? Well, someone could say, well, I'm, going golfing with my wife. Well, that's great. When a woman says that, it's much different in terms of her own risk at saying something as benign as we're going golfing. I'm going golfing with my wife. And so he relates it to Jesus coming out, Jesus revealing this identity, wondering if Jesus, if this truth with which Jesus voiced got kind of stuck in his throat before it came out, knowing that it wouldn't be well received, knowing that there was a risk in sharing it, knowing that there was going to be perhaps some pushback, some change in relationship, or a change in how he was perceived. Peter says, "You are the Christ. You're the one. You're the visible incarnation of the saving God among us." And Jesus accepts that, and then goes on and says, and by the way, this is also part of the deal, So this essential identity as sufferers, or our authentic identity as Christians, as sufferers, we obviously we resist that. We don't like that. I mean, who wants to suffer? But again, Jeff, his last name I'm not pronouncing correctly probably, so I'll avoid it, but he says we often think of coming out as referring to sexuality, but every one of us is called to come out as our true and best selves, even when that is difficult or misunderstood or even derided. Jesus gives an example of the coming out courage all of us need if we're going to live in integrity. And for those of us, again, who are Christian, are we able to authentically confess that we have indeed denied ourselves and live the life of Jesus? This denying oneself, not of course to in any way diminish who we are, and not to diminish who we are as human persons, indeed. That's the incarnation, right? Jesus being enfleshed in us. But perhaps to deny our Nadia Bowles-Weber, another Christian writer, an ordained minister, says, it's to deny oneself is to deny one's solitariness. She tells the story of, that her mother tells her that the first words that came out of her mouth were like, "Do myself," and isn't that typical of many of us? I'll do it myself. I can do it myself. I will do it myself. I'll manage it myself. You know, perhaps, yes, as a sign of, you know, self-aggrandizement or self-purpose and self-determination. But also perhaps because of this fear of coming out as someone who needs others. I will handle the drinking deal by myself. I can do it. I will handle, I can handle this grief. I don't want to talk about how sad I am today. I don't want to talk about it with you. I can handle it myself. And she's saying, you know, to deny oneself is to say, I need you. I can't do it alone. And that is an act of courage in many ways, because of course we want to do it ourselves. So this coming out as dependent on others. I want to I just close with this image, and it doesn't exactly follow from what we talked about, but you know, again, as I'm kind of just like reflecting on all of these things for this weekend, I think this wasn't. I didn't have the time to. I didn't take the time to look. I think it was in Archbishop Rembert Weakland's memoir. He talks about this this image of his own experience. Either he possessed this chalice and plate, this cup and plate. It was given to him, or it was given to a priest whom he knew. But he said it was wood, you know, kind of lacquered wood, and he didn't use it. It was just sitting on a shelf because it was handcrafted and it was quite beautiful. But over the years, as it was necessarily cleaned and, you know, dusted and wiped off with a rag, and people handled it, he began to see that as you wore the first layer of lacquer down, the wood layer, that there was this other image that came through, and it was, you know, these kind of shimmering goldfish, and also different colored, you know, hues, blue and green and very colorful underneath. And so as the cup and plate were used, they became more beautiful, you know, as that first layer was worn off. And Weakland, if that's the place where this was, used it as an image of suffering. You know, that suffering can wear us down, wear something off of us, take off our first layer. But then we become not just more beautiful, that's rather trite and cliche, but we more resemble that image of Christ, that beautiful image of Christ as sufferer, co-sufferer, using the cup and plate, using, you know, sacrificing, using, you know, the body and our body and blood being given. So that's what I'm thinking about these days of reflecting on, and reflection on the scriptures, and our authentic identity as co-sufferers. You know, not only authentic, but you know, it's how we're saved. It's how we're saved. So thank you. Thanks for taking the time to listen in today.